Over the last few years, there's been a good amount of headlines and social media posts about US men's national team fans being outnumbered at their own home stadium. Back in 2022, when the US hosted Morocco in Cincinnati, US fans were significantly outnumbered by Moroccan supporters. Last year, in the US's humiliating result versus Colombia and Maryland, every goal was met with a loud ruckus because Colombians dominated the attendance. Back in June of this year, during a game versus Turkey in Connecticut, the Turkish fans took over the whole stadium. In the most recent Gold Cup, American fans were outnumbered by Guatemalan supporters during a semi-final bout in St. Louis. Most recently, South Korea practically played a home game versus the US in New Jersey. And then, of course, there's Mexico. It wouldn't even matter if the US played in northern Michigan in the winter, the Mexican fans would still outnumber them. This has been the reality though. At any USMNT game, a defensive action, an attack, or a goal from the opposing team is met with a louder roar than anything the so-called United States has to offer. Mauricio Pochettino even expressed concern about this after the US lost to Mexico in the Gold Cup final. I think that today, like with Guatemala, it's a scene in our country to see how important are the fans, to be in the stadium, to stay with the team, to support not only through Instagram, social media, or behind the TV. It's important to be here and translate the energy. I would love to see my players playing with 70,000 people cheering. We need the people. We need the fans. The fans have 1 year to realize how important are the fans in soccer. While he expresses an ideal circumstance, putting this on the fans and saying they need to realize how important they are is the exact reason why US men's national team fan culture is so dog shit in the first place. The team is an eyesore to watch, and hiked up ticket prices only justify people staying at home. But at the same time, I honestly think this argument is pretty lazy. You know, when it comes to journalism and everything, that's all we're hearing. It only scratches the surface and doesn't fully address the actual underlying problems with the fan culture in this country. Because at the end of the day, performance is only really seeing the team lose the support of the core base that had already been outnumbered before. I feel like we as a society have to be reminded at least once a year that the US is still pretty young when it comes to soccer. The sport didn't really pop off until the boom of the 1994 World Cup. Meanwhile, in that same tournament, Brazil earned its 4th star. So naturally, the US soccer scene was so far behind everyone else, and its growth was significantly halted by the fact that anyone who already followed the sport had an allegiance to another nation elsewhere. And ever since, this generational gap has been a problem, as due to many new fans not having family tied to local clubs, they go for more of the flashy and exciting. This has resulted in the culture of American soccer being quite minimal and watered down, because most people are supporting clubs from abroad: Barcelona, Real Madrid, Manchester United. But if we dig even deeper, there's another much more significant thing that has held back the growth of this sport in this country. Before this sport reached the mainstream in the mid-2010s, there was a period of strong anti-soccer sentiment influenced by this mentality of American exceptionalism. To put it simply, American exceptionalism is like a couple dangerous steps away from what the fucking Nazis were doing. Because what American exceptionalism values is this belief that the United States of America is the main character of the world, can do no wrong, and everyone else is inferior.
Have we ever tried to meddle in other countries' elections?
Oh, probably. But it was for the good of the system in order to avoid the communists from taking over. For example, in Europe, in 47, 48, 49, the Greeks and the Italians,
we don't do that now, though? We don't mess around in other people's elections,
only for a very good cause.
Can you do that? Do a Vine video on this.
Basically, this is an extreme superiority complex built upon screaming, "We're the best, land of the free," in disregard of any kind of criticism. But unlike most acts of blind patriotism, American exceptionalism takes this to a level beyond parody. Back in 2003, kitchens in the US House of Representatives once renamed French fries to Freedom Fries, simply because the French government opposed an invasion of Iraq. I am not kidding. But what does it even mean to be American? What exactly is Americanism? Whenever the old food debate pops up and the butt of the joke is the British guy's cuisine, they respond one of two ways. Well, at least our school! Or you had the more sensible rebuttal. Yeah? What do you guys have? Burgers? Twinkies? Cheese in a can? That's American exceptionalism, because it's painted this perception of how the rest of the world sees the US. It's not the actual food that concerns this ideology, it's the products that symbolize the country as this economic superpower. Because if we're talking about actual American cuisine, there are so many aspects of it. Soul food originated in the South through African Americans. Tex-Mex originated in the Southwest through Mexicans and Texas. American barbecue was introduced by the Taino indigenous tribe. German Jews brought the iconic New York City deli culture in the mid-1800s. American exceptionalism is not Americanism because it undermines our biggest influence to this country's history and culture: immigration. Remember when I said the US were always so far behind other major footballing nations because they didn't take the sport seriously until like 1990? Well, that's entirely false. Believe it or not, during the 1920s, soccer was a big deal in the US. Only baseball and college football had it beat. This popularity was built upon the backs of people from Europe who immigrated to the country from the late 1800s to then. All over the Northeast and parts of the Midwest, they created clubs based on their ethnicity. Numerous leagues were also formed as well, and eventually this led to a formation of early professional leagues which had immigrants in leading positions of power. For many in these multiple tight-knit communities, this was like a way to continue to celebrate their pride and culture while assimilating to a new life. This was a game for the foreigners. But as time passed by, that label would be a crutch in the losing battle against American exceptionalism. First came the Soccer Wars in 1928, which was the US's top league ASL boycotting the US Soccer Federation's restrictions on the rules in an effort to popularize the game even more through Americanizing it. To the ASL's credit, the introduction of substitutions was far ahead of its time. But this split damaged American soccer as a whole, and then the Great Depression pretty much just erased it from the mainstream. From there, it would be the immigrants that would keep soccer in the US alive. However, pop culture and the media would do everything to undermine the sport's lack of Americanism. It was constantly called a foreign sport in papers to divert people towards more American sports like baseball and gridiron. This eventually prompted soccer in the US to become a lot more Americanized in an effort to regain popularity and also become financially sustainable. But in the process of doing this, soccer in the US slowly saw its immigrant upbringings disappear. Everything had become Americanized to the point where all that was left was an easy to repackage, sanitized, middle-class sport that looked more profitable. This appropriation of the sport is also a reflection of how this country has treated immigrants. The US government has, and still dictates, who they consider white, while everyone else is deemed inferior. The more obvious ones: black people, Arabic people, Latinos, Asians, etc. But people forget that Italians weren't considered white at one point, and they faced a lot of oppression and hatred for it. And did you know that back in the 18th century, Germans weren't considered white? Germans. But this is why US soccer culture is so far behind. It doesn't have anything to do with starting way later on. It's this us against them painted as false Americanism tactic that alienated the very communities which made soccer matter in the first place. I mean, even going back to the USA-Korea game this month, even if I was a Korean who has spent his whole life in the States, why would I support a team that ditched me and a country that purposefully pitted my culture against Black Americans, which fueled riots that caused lasting schisms in Asian and Black American relations and fucked tons of generational trauma that are still experienced to this day? That's insane to me. But it's not just history. Today, many of those same communities are still low income and working class, just like those who started this sport in the first place, and they continue to be alienated by greedy US Soccer Federation higher-ups who are hiking up already exuberant ticket prices and putting up a paywall just to play this sport. And thanks to MLS franchises and the lack of pro-rel, even forming new clubs that reflect people's own backgrounds and cultures is basically impossible. The United States soccer scene had the potential to beat fucking NASCAR as the working class sport, but instead it is the epitome of that famous saying, created by the poor, stolen by the rich. Because every single thing that the early immigrants and those after them did for this sport has been shit on by a predatory economic system masked by shallow, blind patriotism. Nowadays, American exceptionalism has taken more of a progressive shape, because social issues like race and gender identity have become popular. Thus, profitable. Did you know that we care about you? Here's our message of support. Here's a bunch of people that identify as the race of the month. Now you need to show your support to the cause by paying $40 for a lanyard and a shitty quality shirt. Just to make a profit, they'll vilify and alienate you from greater society, contributing to the constant cultural war by repackaging a legitimate cultural issue into a sanitized product to shove down everyone's throats until people get tired of it because they don't actually know any history or context beyond the colors because these corporations never bothered to tell anyone because they don't actually give a fuck. Soccer everywhere else is about community and identity. I'm not saying that this is only an issue in the US. There's plenty of problems with other countries, but there are still at least avenues for people to find community and celebrate identity. In the US though, it feels like everything is a consumer product marketed at you, not something you actually build together. And until that changes, US national team culture is going to continue being the same soulless shit because it stands by the same soulless shit. I wasn't expecting this video to be this heated. I also had no plan of talking about the history of the sport like that, the upbringings and everything like that, but I'm glad I did because I feel like a lot more people should know about how this sport was actually brought up in this country. I feel like oftentimes we don't get that because not even the US Soccer Federation does that themselves, which is another problem. They celebrate these differences. We're considered one nation, one team. But if you look at their history timeline on their website, there's nothing there of note. There's just the most basic facts you could think of. I think that's enough of me rambling though. What do you guys think about this whole situation? Let me know down below. And of course, a massive shout out to all our members, including Janusz Balas, German Sayu 7, Jeremiah Owusu Ajimang, Brazilian Fury, Django, Anazir Makalongcom, Alex Rod, Kentra Agatra, Saint Terrence, Sylvia Citrus, Rashford Enthusiast, Cheesebait, Winder Gel, Finn Likes Rugby More, Davox, The Portugizer, Wise Orange, Polar Protos, Von Fan, Lucien Von Kreuz, A Ghostly Owl, Coney Wolves, Lickstab, Matanai, Apollo, Congo Jas 1, Thrilling ADT 13, Los Milos, Le James Braun, Vecino, Napside, Money Cash Hose, Quantavious Pork, Lilia Lover, Stewed Monk, Red Yellow, Kevin Mojica, Fuxi, MX Sand, Harry Maguire's Left Toenail, Flaquito, Kev C, Dominic Griffin, Kyler Krez, Mohamed Altanib, Niche, Patrick Barley, Rashford God 5, Raspberry Ale, and Unbroken Persona. If you'd like to become a member on the channel, there'll be a link down below. There'll be a link here and down below. You can follow my Twitter if you want, follow my Instagram if you like, follow my Twitch. I'm going to be doing an Arsenal Man City watch along. I'm sure you guys will be very excited about that. I hope we win, please, I hope we win. Also, World Cup qualifiers review video should come out next week. And also, I am still working on the Italy video essay. I'm so sorry. It just is so hard to put together when you have other things to work on like this video. But anyways, until then, I'll see you guys. Ooh.